All right, welcome back into the We Shall Not Sleep podcast. Thank you so much for joining us once again this week. Oh my heavens, I have been anticipating this one for a while, and I've teased it for even longer, as this was actually Adam, who you'll hear later on in this episode. It was his idea. I have to credit him to have a group podcast. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to say thank you for all of the listeners. Thank you for everyone who is going to listen. Welcome to the We Shall Not Sleep podcast, and this is what we do here. We talk about real things, and hopefully that can help other Christians on their faith journey. That's the end goal of any of these. It was either in the bi-weekly segments where I just kind of give you the drive time thoughts that's going on inside my head, and the longer ones bi-weekly as well that kind of add a little bit more perspective into some topics that I like to hit on. So I hope you guys are enjoying that. Thank you for the feedback. Where you can email anything like that to wsnspodcast@gmail.com. Please feel free to continue to hit us up on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts, including SoundCloud, where we're hosted. Thank you for the folks over there. Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. So, back in the fall of 2012, I, along with the majority of these gentlemen, began our journey at Olivet Nazarene University. And lo and behold, we had no idea what God was going to do in our lives. And by His grace, we all came to be together in this group where we practice discipleship and accountability. And every week since college, we've had a night, Thursday nights, where we get together on a phone call and we talk about life. And it's brotherhood, it's true discipleship. So I want to let you in on that. Thank you to Adam who suggested it, and thank you to all the members who were able to join us tonight. I sincerely thank you. Sit back and enjoy being a fly on the wall for our D group. Say, hey, dudes, thank you very much for joining me tonight. We got Jonathan, Adam, Dan, Jared, and Zane. We just got two of our guys who are away this week. So if we happen to do this again, maybe we can be introduced to the rest of our members. But thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. How you guys doing? Adam, what's going on with you, man?
Not much, just kind of hanging out. Hanging out at the office tonight, been doing some work today. But yeah, life is going good. I'm chilling out in Colorado. I'm a youth pastor in Sterling, working with Jonathan's dad, actually, which is pretty cool. Thanks, Jonathan, for the hookup with that, with this position, just because I was looking a couple years ago, I was looking for a position, and he's like, hey, my dad's still looking for someone. I'm like, sweet. And then we had an hour and a half conversation, and it always makes me chuckle because after our first hour and a half conversation, he's like, you know what, I'm going to fly you out here. And I've never been flown anywhere by anyone. So it was kind of cool. So it ended up working out, and I'm grateful. So Emily and I were out here, and we're doing great. So
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thanks for serving the Lord in that way. Yes, we have a few pastors in this group, so we'll make sure to watch our language tonight. So thanks for that, Adam, especially for Adam. He's a youth pastor. You have to watch him.
You're right.
But let's throw it over here. I guess keeping with that scene, Dan, who I was his best man. I'm not saying that we have favorites in the group, but Dan, how are you doing tonight? And where do you find yourself with your position? Where you living? Where are you staying? What are you doing?
I am staying in Minneapolis, and I'm a youth pastor at a Lutheran church here near the Twin Cities. And I am doing just fine, getting ready to get on a flight tomorrow to go back to my home of Massachusetts. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, Minneapolis is great. I live here. Michael will live here pretty soon. And, it's a great place.
Yeah, well, Dan,
Great place.
Dan's the jokester of our group. Yes, he tries every single time we talk to try to get me to go move out there with him. I don't know why you still insist upon that.
I think
Because it's a wonderful city.
It's a common thread in our group. All of us try and get each other to move where we are. It's like, hey, we should move here. I think we mention it at least once a week.
Well, my vote's for Colorado with you, Adam. It's a much better state than Minneapolis and Minnesota. So that'd be my vote, Dan, just for the record.
That's a dumb vote.
Okay. Well, at least it's official. It's been recorded. So I guess sticking with out of state, Mr. Broom, Jared Broom is here with us, man. How are you doing tonight? Where do you find yourself living these days?
Hello. I am in Urbana, Illinois, around the University of Illinois. I like it. My parents just recently moved down to Florida. They're doing okay. Their plan down there though is not going quite as planned. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, recently I grew up around this area, Urbana, Champaign, Illinois area, just hour and 15 south of Olivet, down the interstate. Born and raised around here. My family, my extended family, was born and raised around here. Although it's kind of funny. I'm now the last one of my entire extended family that's now in East Central Illinois, except for maybe a couple people. But the rest of our family is essentially moved out of state. I do have my half sister that lives in town, but I think she's the only one. I think the rest of my family has moved out of the area. So, but I love the area. A lot of people don't exactly like Illinois, but I feel like it's home, and I like the area, so it's really fun. It's great to be here.
And where are you working? What are you doing these days?
Oh yeah, good question. I am in between jobs right now. However, I have recently Caterpillar got back to me, and I'm thinking of getting back with them. The pay is, I think, going to be about just over $2 more an hour than I was earlier in the year when I was working for them. I had recently gone to another position after Caterpillar, but that unfortunately did not work out too well. So I've been looking for other opportunities at other places, but Caterpillar expressed its interest in me again. I had contacted them, and they expressed great interest in me coming back. So I'm thinking of going back there. I am also waiting to hear back from State Farm if I'm going to pursue them or not. But it's more than likely probably going to be Caterpillar as a customer support analyst. So
Awesome, man.
so yeah, I had fun in that role. Wish it had benefits and paid time off, but I might have to wait a little longer for that. But I'm a patient person. The pay seems to be more than enough. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you updating us on that because, this is obviously recorded for a podcast, but we're also actually catching up with each other in real time. So it's a
Okay,
benefit for
good.
the rest of us. So thank you
Good.
for sharing that. And certainly something we'll be praying for still.
Good. I'm glad I could share that even on the podcast or whatever. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure the other people will check in a couple weeks from now saying, "Did he get the job?"
Yeah.
So, but thanks, man. I'll throw it over now to our friend Zane, the smartest person in the group by far.
No.
The most experienced in life as well. What you doing, man? Where do you find yourself these days? For the people who don't know you, and for the rest of us, how's life going?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, things are, I'd say, going pretty well. So I'm here in Bourbon, Illinois, where Olivet is, and yeah, I'm an engineer at a pharmaceutical company here in town, and been here for the past 5 years, I guess, which is kind of crazy to say. Met my wife at Olivet, and we have two girls. One is over a little, maybe almost 2.5 years old, and the other is about 7 months old. So yeah, it definitely keeps us busy. And,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely quite exciting. Our youngest has just started to sleep a little bit better through the night, so that's definitely great for all of us.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess that's a brief rundown.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And it's one of the reasons why I want to place emphasis on the fact that we know this is probably the biggest sacrifice for you at the end of a long day to be able to take some time. We really appreciate it. But it's always nice to be able to catch up with you as an aside. My coworker, who's our age, just had his kid last week, and I'm thinking as I'm talking to you now, he's never been this tired before, so I can imagine. I can imagine you can relate. But thank you so much for updating us and being here, man. It's so cool to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys for sure. Glad to be here.
And I think finally here, just kind of introduction, Jonathan, who is here,
Hey.
close to home here in Michigan, man. What's going on with you?
Yeah, Not a whole lot, man. I mean, there's not a whole lot, but yeah, a whole lot. Pretty busy fall coming up here. Yeah. I work at the Gerald R. Ford International Airport in Grand Rapids in the IT department. And I am one of 3 for the airport. So things are pretty busy, especially right now.
I imagine.
Yeah, pray for me tomorrow because I am still, both my other coworkers are on vacation. So I'm the only IT guy there.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. And it says this is a Friday.
Yeah. 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 I've survived 2 days. Just need to do one more.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent, man. Which I'll come back to you here in a second. So it's something that we do here on the podcast. Any guests that I have, and these guys know this too, I was going to ask them, but I think it's fundamental that us Christians share this because it doesn't matter if it's quote unquote cliche. It's so important how we all came to Christ. And if I would ask of you, and I'll start with you, Jonathan, and this is for the rest of you guys, like how did you come to be a Christian? Just simply, like, is it something regardless of whether or not you were raised that way? There's always a moment when your faith becomes your own. It's not your parents. And for many of us, we get that realization at college. But for your journey to Christ, how did that happen?
Oh man, that is definitely a story. Yeah, so I was raised in a pastor's home. So it was there from day one. I remember first the time that I gave my life to Christ was when I was like 4 is when this actually happened. But parents took me to, I don't know why, but a drama called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. Boy, was I a scared little 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like my stepping into the faith as my own, I feel like that kind of happened in high school, and then there was just a lot of growth through college. I had a rather rough move from a church in Illinois, moving up to Grand Rapids here, and I didn't make that adjustment initially well, and so there was a lot to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And the church district up here was really supportive, and I feel like that's kind of what helped me step into the faith as my own.
Yeah, what age range would that have been for you then?
It's probably a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
When I feel like that was probably about the time that it started being a lot more real and a lot more
like something that's more like solidified, so like concrete, something like that. Yeah, which
there's more behind it.
Yeah, it's more of a foundation than all more cultivated, which we'll discuss through D group and just through Olivet too, just through the opportunities I can imagine later on. Well, that's great, man. That's going to be a theme for a lot of us here, but it's still an important story because I'm pretty sure not all the members of the group know each other's journey to Christ. I think that's so important because that's what brought us all here. So, hey, thanks, man. Zane, how did you come to Christ, man? Is this something that's always been a part of your life? Like, how did that all work for you?
No, not necessarily. So I guess was maybe a little bit more casual. So I mean, really no big involvement until I'd almost want to say right around high school, like right before high school. And then it was a little bit more like I guess casual Christian. But the big defining moment was when I got to Olivet, like I said, went to Olivet, was pretty casual Christian, had never really opened the Bible on my own. And here I am in a place where people are just, casually reading the Bible out in the quad and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I feel a little out of place here. and yeah, so my RA had actually challenged me to start reading. He's just saying, read one proverb a day. Just throughout the days of the month. Almost adds up to about the number of proverbs. So just try one proverb a day, and it was really good for me. Yeah, learning about wisdom and stuff like that. And just being in God's word, and yeah, it was really I don't know, something just kind of started clicking for me, and being in my my Christian formation class and things like that, and just really being in the same floor as a whole bunch of guys, and we had our Bible studies and stuff like that, and just learning more and more about Christ and the sacrifice. And there's just one day where I went to the chapel, and it was Pastor Mark Holcomb who was giving a message about basically like, I thought he singled me out there, looked me straight in the face and said, "Are you running from God?" I'm like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. And it was just really overwhelming for me. And it was an altar call, and I went up there, and pretty much all the guys on my floor went down and laid hands on me, and it was just an incredibly emotional experience for me. And that was the really big defining moment, I guess, for me. So it was a really cool experience, I guess.
So that was your freshman year?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because that in a way it would make sense, because at least I can testify to this, having met you sophomore year, is that I knew your name because people talk about this Zane person that, was really friendly, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then I met you, and you creeped me out, not because you did anything wrong, because you were like really nice, and it wasn't fake. It wasn't
a little strong.
Well, it wasn't disingenuous though. That's the thing, is I
Yeah.
hadn't met somebody as just kind-hearted as you. So I'd like, in a way, it somewhat surprises me, because I had totally, either I can't remember, or I didn't know the fact that you really weren't committed until freshman year, because I think it was so obvious. It's very apparent that the Holy Spirit was just like, this is a cool thing. I'm going to share this with everyone. Just, and you were just give people hugs for whatever reason. And it wasn't creepy. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fine. But you have been a staple of our group for throughout all college and since college, because of that, like, that characteristic of just kindness. And I've always appreciated you for that. And that makes a whole lot of sense now, adding to that story. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't even want to ask Dan, just because, I guess I have to. Dan, you grew up on the East Coast. How'd you come to meet Jesus all the way over there on the East Coast?
I just want to say too, I think it's really interesting that, like, we've never actually asked each other this question, like, and we've been talking and doing this for, what's it, 7 or 8 years now or something like that,
like 8.
But for me, I was sitting here thinking about it while we're talking, and I was thinking about how my relationship with Jesus is kind of very similar to my first impression of my wife. Okay. And my wife knows this story, and I'm sure I think Michael knows this story too. But I just walk into a room, and I didn't want to be interested in anybody, because I was a supervisor with a company, and that's can't date a subordinate. And I walked into a room, and I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in anybody in here, and my relationship with God is kind of the same way, in that, like, I grew up in a Christian house, and my parents, like, they're like, hey, say this prayer, when you were 5, and I was like, all right, so I said it. And it took a while of, like, a lot of people in my life who influenced me and had an impact on me, for me to realize, like, how wonderful, like, Jesus is. Kind of like the same thing with my wife. It took me like a few weeks of actually getting to know her to be like, oh, this person's actually kind of cool. I kind of think I like this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And just for clarification, that was before marriage. That wasn't after marriage. That was before marriage.
Yes, it was before. But my journey to faith, I feel like was pretty. It came to like a peak at when I was probably like 16, and camp was a huge influence on my life. I spent pretty much every week of the summer at camp, and there was a lot of people up there who really encouraged me to make my faith my own. But then when I got to college and nobody was really checking in on me anymore, that's when things took a different turn and it went the opposite direction. And I remember when people started bringing up things that I hadn't even thought about, things that my church never talked about, like things that like seem contradictory in the Bible or whatever. And pretty much freshman and sophomore year, I kind of had a little bit of a crisis of faith, in that there was times where I seriously considered, like, am I actually a Christian? I don't know. You know what I mean? And I have to, like, honestly, I have to credit D group as one of the things that really pulled me back in the right direction. And so yeah, my faith journey has been, it's been ups and it's been downs, just like any other relationship in my life. But I think that's the easiest way to describe how I got here.
Because you got in, we'll talk about this in a second. You came in junior year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that's I did not know that. That's fascinating. I don't know if any of those other guys knew that. I didn't. I mean, I know you've mentioned it in the past that there was this kind of wavering, but I didn't realize it was, that D group was playing a role in that. Yeah, and the fact that we've never discussed it until now. Trust me, it wasn't planned that way. It's just kind of what it was. It's like, yeah.
It was honestly a combination of D group and honestly living with you, and which is why I think you were my best man at my wedding for a reason.
Well, you're welcome. I'll take all the credit. It's no problem. For pushing you away from the faith, for D group to bring you back. But thank you. That's really kind of you to say, and it's also very humbling. And I'll just say, way to go, because this is going to reinforce what we talk about here in a few moments about what this group has meant to us and what it's done. So thanks, Dan. I appreciate it, bud. Mr. JB, Jared Broom, man, just real quick, you mentioned it, you alluded to it many times in this group, but for the rest of those who don't know, how did you come to Christ? What's your Jesus journey like?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. While I grew up similar to Dan, I grew up in a Christian home. My parents Dad worked for the University of Illinois in the Abbott Power Plant for 29 and a half years. And he'd been a member of the church I go to now for a very long time, since like 1978. So he'd been very active in the church that I go to now. And my mom joined him when they got married. And then, it's funny, my parents would always invite me to church, or, as I like to say, they like put like a little, like a donut on a string, and like drag me along or whatever.
Gotcha,
yeah. That's how they get you, the donuts at church. So, I essentially only want to go to church for like the donuts, but when I was there, I would be very involved in worship. And so I think I had a somewhat of a relationship with Jesus when I was in, kids' church or whatever. But it wasn't until I got to 6th grade in our youth group that I said yes to Jesus. In elementary school, I think I had a good relationship, but the transition between elementary school and middle school was a little rough. 6th grade was not a great year, but I just didn't know if I was connected enough in my youth group. But and then for the first couple months, for like September and October, I don't think I went to youth group at all. I didn't think I'd know too many people. I think some of my friends were not going or something, or I didn't know if I'd know quite that many people, or I didn't have too many close friends before or anything. But for whatever reason, I just felt like a calling or something, or I felt like I felt drawn to go to youth group or do something more than something on Sunday or something,
Yeah.
or something. I don't know. I just felt this, voice in my head. Now I know it was God, but then I didn't quite know what it was. But I decided, I asked my parents. My parents were very respectful. They didn't, they encouraged me to go to youth group, and they said they would drive me, but if I didn't want to, that they wouldn't push me or anything. My parents have always been very kind of respectful, and they would always encourage me to follow my faith, but they also didn't want to, shove it down my throat, as you might say.
Sure.
Um,
Good man.
so they drove me to youth group, sixth grade, I think back in late October, 2006, when I was in sixth grade. And then I kind of, I really enjoyed being there. It was a place where I could find friends, and if school wasn't going well, I had a safe place at youth group where I could really, really grow, really have friends and everything. But I could just go there and be myself. And then later that year, I got so, I loved youth group so much, and I grew to meet Jesus more and more there, that I think near Christmas 2006, there was an altar call at our church, and if anybody that wanted to accept Jesus, I think. Well, actually, I don't know if there was a call, but I just knew that one morning in December, that year, I knew I wanted to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. So I went up and I got someone to pray for me, and I accepted Jesus. But I was so nervous about getting baptized, because I didn't want to get baptized in front of hundreds of people. It was just really nervous for me. So I didn't get baptized until my freshman year of high school. But that was a big part of my faith journey, and then that's how I came to know Jesus. But later on, a couple more big moments were when I went on a couple mission trips to Mexico with our youth group. Those were big moments in getting kind of transitioning into high school. So, but yeah, that's the when I point to a moment of when I came to know Jesus, that was the moment of close to December of 2006. When I accepted Jesus and I went up and got in prayer.
It's so cool how we remember those dates. There's just definitive moments in our lives, and
Yep.
you describe when you can relate to a lot of other people, which I think adds a lot of credibility to our faith. Is that you describe this pull? It's like it's not that you feel obligated, but it's just like there's everything in your being. You have to respond. So that's cool, man. Thank you very much for sharing, and it's really cool because I had not heard that.
Yep.
So excellent. And then finally, Adam, rounding everything out, man, somebody who was in your wedding and has seen your family home and where you grew up. I definitely can understand why you were a Christian, just hearing and spending time with your brother and your parents. But what did that journey though individually look like for you?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the two of them, or just my family's been very formational in my faith. But I was born into a Christian home, and I think the way that when I have the opportunity to share this story, the way that I always share it is that, one thing I appreciated about my church is that I didn't have a set of parents. I had like 6 or 7 homes that I was in and out of all the time, just because I had friends, in the church, lots of kids around my age, and the Allens and the Harringtons and the Steins, and just all these families that just those adults were not only several examples of what healthy marriages looked like, but also just like what does it look like to follow Jesus, to love the Lord, and to all these different things. So I accepted Christ at the age of 6, and kind of grew up into that. Was always involved in youth group stuff. Middle school kind of transitioned to more of a public school. I'd gone to a Christian school when I was younger. And really, to make a long story short, around junior year, I realized that I was kind of living the dual life, I guess. Something in youth ministry we might call the proliferation of self, is you're living one way. Yeah. You're living this way around one group of friends, and you're living this way around another group of friends, and you're just and I realized that like no one would have known I was a Christian like at school. like if I would have told them that I was a Christian, they probably wouldn't have believed me just because I acted no different, right? So it was around my junior year that I just like I need to take my faith more seriously, and I wanted to start diving into my faith more. I started meeting with my youth pastor for a couple of different reasons, and he met with me on Wednesdays at McDonald's. We got breakfast together, all that stuff. So he was Pastor Bob was huge in my formation those later years of high school. Went to Olivet and found myself in a number of different groups, surrounded by people who loved the Lord. Got involved in ministry teams there, the traveling worship groups that traveled in the summer. So we'd go to like 8 or 9 camps in a summer. And during my first summer traveling was when I received my call to ministry, call to youth ministry. And that's when really probably one of the bigger moments where that propelled me into really just seeking the Lord. And all of that served as a really great kind of moratorium for me to figure out what I believed and to make my faith my own and like seriously my own, and to start thinking about, like, where does the Lord want me? Where does he want me in ministry? And all of that. So, yeah.
Well, and that's I can relate to you probably the most because of specifically about having the set of parents and being able to have a potential, like just a lot of examples of marriage and support around you, and then kind of it culminating in the fact that Olivet is like kind of like the breeding ground for a lot of make it or break it faiths, because you're on your own, you're surrounded with a lot of people that hopefully think the same way, but when you have the opportunity to be around other people in that way, you're shown sometimes the hypocrisy of Christianity because everyone's trying to figure out who they are, but you also can find people that can help reinforce that faith and help you out, which is what D group eventually began. And I want to stay on you, Adam, because this is really the meat of our podcast tonight, is how D group began. And you tell it better than me because our technical first D group was like freshman year in the fall, when I was kind of having a little bit of not a crisis. I don't want to exaggerate the fact that I was just not in a very good place. I was having some trouble adjusting to my roommate situation. I was not having a good time with band. Band camp has a stigma for a reason. And I'll let you tell this, but I was not in a really good place and you asked to talk. So I'll let you take it from there, because this was basically how D group, this was like the seeds of D group.
Yeah. So I can't remember exactly. I know it was one night I was getting back to my room. We were on the same floor. We were at completely opposite ends of the hall. So I was kind of walking to my room, and you noticed me, and you greeted me in some fashion. But like the way you did it was weird. Like you were visibly upset. You were visibly just, I don't know. And I felt a tug, and this is probably one of the more significant pulls that I've felt, that I'm really glad that I followed through on. Just like, hey, like you should go talk to him. It's like, okay. So I go down and just like kind of just sit in your room, and it's like, hey, what's going on, man? And then we literally spiral conversation for the next like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe it was at least 2. But we started talking about just like, you were voicing some of your frustrations. We found some common ground. And I do you remember what, so Michael and I were both in relationships at the time, and we both had, our significant others at the time had us read the same book.
Yes.
Which at the time, it was so funny. I was so into it. I was like, oh yes. Because the book was When God Writes Your Love Story. And do you remember, Dan? It's good. Anyway, so When God Writes Your Love Story. So we kind of bonded over that. It's like, oh, you had to read that book too? Oh man.
Yep.
Anyway, we started talking about that. We started talking about just like similar struggles in life. And we touched on a lot of topics that just people don't really talk about. And we're like, you know what? Like, we should like see if anyone else struggles with these things, and maybe we can like have a support group and all this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was our freshman year, and it was a seed because another member who's not here is Curtis. He was also in band. We knew each other. So Adam, Michael, and Curtis were the three people that were kind of like starting this because we were in band together. We shared a lot of the same commonalities, a lot of the same frustrations, and same struggles. So we kept up through freshman year with those things because we were around each other all the time. And so our first official D group meeting didn't happen until sophomore year when we were like, okay, we want to expand out because it's not just us three. We want to go farther than that. So yeah, we had kind of like the first meetings at D group wasn't official until sophomore year, but it started freshman year. And when I went to, and this is something that Zane mentioned, our chaplain, Mark Holcomb, there was these minister teams that were run, and I heard of these things called D groups, which stand for discipleship groups. I kind of asked what they were because it was a student sponsored ministry that would later go on to fizzle out, except for our group, which looking back now is hilarious. But I said, "What?" Yeah, way to go. We're still going strong. So I said, like, all right, well, I want to do that. Let's do that. And he gave me some curriculum, just like, here's kind of a foundation of what you do. So I said, all right, well, I got Adam, I got Curtis. Who else are we going to get? And at least in this order, Zane, I think you were the next one to join. It was either you or Jonathan, but Zane, I will direct the question to you first. Is do you remember coming into D group? Do you remember what that experience was like for you?
I think I just casually found myself there because we were on the same floor freshman year.
Yeah.
We were in the same area of the on the same side of the floor. And I think I just remember maybe you invited me once or twice, and I was like studying for these crazy tests in engineering. I was like, I don't know if I have time for it. But yeah, no, I think I just found myself in there a few times, and I was like, I really like this. This is a, great group of guys. Absolutely. And yeah, I don't know. I think I just became part of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and actually, I'm mixing that up. That's right. So sophomore year, we were on the same room in Hills, which was an upperclassman men's dorm. It was actually Andrew is the one that Curtis, I think, brought up. But then, yes, you joined. And I'm so grateful for that. Again, because Zane, it's true. Zane's the smartest of all of us. He actually worked the hardest amongst all of us. I think I can say that tenfold. He worked harder than anyone else. Like he didn't really, I joke he didn't really enjoy college if it wasn't for D group, because he put in work, and there's a reason why you have success with your profession, man. You put in work, and you're a very skilled person. So, but the fact that you took time every week to be able to come out for a couple hours, that just, man, it's so cool to see what God can do. But thank you, man.
It was a great time. It was absolutely fantastic. It was absolutely a big distraction. It was so much more than just a distraction, but yeah, it was exactly what I needed every week. So you guys were an absolute blessing. So, and still are.
Yes, it still continues. The next one, I still feel bad, but it's a learning point to how arrogant I can be at times. It's a very humbling moment. Curtis said he knew this guy named Jonathan Couchenour, and I'm like, Couchenour, of like, well, there's like a million of them here at Olivet, so I've heard the last name. And he said, I really think he should join our D group. And at that point, it was just four of us. It been five. I cannot remember. Forgive me if Jonathan came. Did you come real quick, Jonathan, when Zane was there already?
Yeah. Zane was already there.
So we had five guys at this point. It was myself, Curtis, Adam, Zane, Andrew, and we were contemplating adding a sixth member. And the reason why is because we had 2 hours. Guys, I don't know if you remember the first five of us, we were talking so in depth about so many things, and we're sharing so much, and we didn't have so much going on. And I guess that's what I'm saying. One of our other members, Jordan, was also there. Thank you, Dan. That I'm like, I don't know if we have enough room to add another person. And Curtis looked at me and he said, Michael, this guy's looking for discipleship. Who are you to deny him of that? I went, well, that's the biggest slap in the face I've had. So I said, yeah, let's bring him in. So Jonathan, do you remember that time? Do you remember what your first experience was? Like, I don't know how Curtis even knew you, so I don't know how that connection was made to begin with.
Curtis and I had been working in the same youth group at well, oh man, I forget if it was North Campus still or if it was Gathering Point. But we were in the same youth group, worked with the same group of kids.
Oh, okay.
And so I
that's
talked to him quite a bit every
Okay.
Wednesday.
Everyone, good. Well, and I mean, it's a testament to Curtis because saying, hey, we got this group of people. Like, you want to come to it? Do you remember like coming in there sophomore year? What was like your first impression, and what were your takeaways from coming in?
I mean, I already was aware of a good number of you guys. I mean, I'd run into Zane on campus, Adam, you, Michael. We were in a class together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so my first impression was it was a group of guys I could trust to talk with about pretty much anything, faith-wise or what I was struggling with or any sort of spiritual thing. It just felt like a support that I needed.
Mm-hmm. At that time.
Especially at that time. We were there was some tough stuff going on at a church that my family was at
Yeah.
at the time.
That's right.
And
that's right.
You guys were a fantastic support through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a godsend because I just needed some people to talk to.
Yeah.
And some guys just empathize with me and help me work through things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a sense of brotherhood. And if you guys remember whether, and I'll get to you in a moment here, Jared, but throughout those 3 years we met together, there wasn't one night where we didn't end the evening just huddled up, just in prayer together, and then just giving each other hugs and saying, hey man, I'm here for you. And and that's the best part, is that it grew into the fact, this is the best, this is so hilarious, is that, Adam and I are very emotional people. Plus we both of us love to talk. We would talk to each other about D group sightings. Like, hey, I saw Dan today. It's like, wow, in the wild you did. Yeah, he was going across
Michael, we live
quad.
together.
Oh, it was the best. Like, yeah, it was still so exciting. But it was also coming back in like the next week saying, yeah, that Jonathan had talked to Zane, or Zane had seen Adam, and so forth, like where we can make those connections because we didn't run in the same circles of friends. That was the other thing, is that I think I mentioned that once a lot of us came in. I'm like, who would put all of us in a room together? Because different personalities, different. I mean, again, there's always popularity. Jordan Lingo being the one signing autographs before he'd have to enter my dorm room, and that's just something that once that door was closed and we prayed for the night, it was like everything was gone, and I always appreciated that. Jared, you came in when we were all seniors because you were a year behind us. But you were kind of forced into it. I tried to just say, hey, just come to that. Do you remember those days when we were all living in Stratford and meeting out there?
Oh yeah. That was we it was an interesting story of getting absorbed into the discipleship group, but I really do appreciate it. A lot of times I did kind of feel a little bit like I was just outside, looking in sometimes, or whatever, or I didn't quite like understand the dynamic or something. Like sometimes it was like you guys had your in group because you guys were about in the same grade. You guys kind of grew up together throughout Olivet, and then there was little old me from a different class who also had other friends as well. I was like, man, I don't know about this, but I did feel very welcome all the time, and you guys were so willing to welcome someone else in that is, to be honest, very very weird person, but yeah, I felt very at home with all of you guys, and yeah, it was really fun. And I know sometimes I can be very kind of like, I want my own space. I want to be left alone, so or whatever. But when I forced myself to like join, it was definitely a highlight of my week, honestly.
Mhm.
And some of the conversations that we would have would be like, man, we're getting really honest and I'm loving it. Like having brutally honest conversations where people are able to share what they believe, which may be contrarian to other, beliefs, is really staggering in today's age. And it's very against culture. Culture today wants to put us in tribes and say that we're not supposed to associate with another tribe or something, or someone that thinks another way.
Mhm.
And I think discipleship, and I think D group was very not anti-culture, but countercultural to that. And that's what I appreciate about discipleship group, that we are able to have controversial discussions, and we're able to share things that are we see an issue a different way. And that's kind of what D group has meant to me. And sometimes I'm not always able to come all the time. Sometimes I like my Thursday nights to myself, but to have that group of men to kind of fall back on and say, man, I need someone to talk to. I need a group of guys to sharpen me, to that I can pour my heart out to say, man, I'm struggling with this week, or whatever, is just invaluable. And I just think it's so remarkable that you guys we have been continuing this after 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just absolutely remarkable after college. So.
You have to throw yourself in that conversation. You are a part of it. And yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely understand your disposition, because you did come later to the table, and you wouldn't have the same camaraderie necessarily as some of us, but that didn't matter. And
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
then the fact that you lived, because like our senior year, Jonathan, myself, Dan, and you all lived together. So it's kind of like, come on, you have to be a part of this, man. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy this. And yeah, you were just as willing to go to Taco Bell and all the other places we go to on Thursday nights together, just the same. So, but thank you for sharing that. And Dan, for the last person, kind of like D group, you alluded to the fact of how, like, what D group did for you. But you, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, because like how you got into D group is hilarious. But do you remember that time? Do you remember that specific, like all those logistics and how that worked out?
Well, mostly I think I remember being on class council my junior year, and you had like your thing going. This is when you and we weren't really close at this. I mean, we were friends, but we weren't like super close at this point.
Right.
And I come back to the dorm, and I knew that like Tuesday nights were like, you told me like Tuesday nights like that's all I want. You know what I mean? If you want to watch TV, do whatever. I just want Tuesday nights in the dorm. And I said, that's fine. So I felt weird because I walked in and you guys were all having D group. And I was like trying to be quick about it because I was trying to, let you have your space and all this other stuff. And you guys were having that conversation you alluded to earlier with Curtis about letting Jonathan join or something like that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I was like putting some stuff away or whatever, Curtis is like, well, we should just let him join. And he pointed to me and I was like, huh? I wasn't looking for anything, but like, I actually wanted something like that. I just wasn't like willing to go and seek it out.
I completely forgotten about that. That is hilarious.
Yeah. And so then after like you were convinced to start inviting other people to the group, you're like, well, you live here, so you should come. Yeah. Kind of the same with Jared. Jared was told to come to D group. So
it's mandatory. If you're living with me, you're going to be a part of D group, whether you like it or not. Yeah, and that's what. And again, I can't speak, because hopefully someday you guys will hear from Andrew and Curtis and how their story came to D group. But what we tried to do, and there are a lot of accountability groups out there. I mean, if you think of like the most secular one, AA, I mean, which are great programs. I mean, they're built around a fundamental Christian concept about acknowledging the fact you can't go through life, you can't get through these things on your own. You need the support. And at college, if we're all honest, looking back now, I mean, especially freshman year, which is coming up on 9 years ago, none of us knew what we were doing, but everyone projected like we knew what we were doing, wondering if anyone would notice. That's pretty much where you're at in college. You're trying to still kind of be cool, act cool, while your insides want to be on your outside. half the time. And from a spiritual perspective, you had people, it doesn't matter if you grew up as a missionary kid, if you grew up as a Christian your entire life, when you're away from home, for most people, a little ways from their parents, it's your own. No one's going to check on you whether or not you're going to church. No one's going to check your internet history. At least there's ways of getting around that. No one's going to know if you're addicted to certain things that you shouldn't be. No one knows that. And when you're around other people that can hold you to a higher standard, it either forces you to shape up or it makes you hide out of shame. And that was something that happened. And again, I'm not gonna, for the sake of privacy, there was something that happened our freshman year that called to attention of a lot of things that a lot of people struggle with, and it brought a lot of shame on people. And there were some outlets given. It's like, how do we as men, how do we then, just as women, overcome a lot of these insecurities, a lot of the issues we deal with? And I'm thinking we got to have something for it. And that was actually a point of conversation which Adam alluded to in our first D group conversation, say, hey, what do you think about this? How can we work through this together? And it's like, well, can you be my accountability partner? And it's like, well, you can always lie to your accountability partner. So you can always not tell them that you're having problems out of shame. And there's always pressure there. So I'm like, well, we got to have something more than that. And I don't want to just come here and read the Bible and then that's it. Like, I don't want it to be a Bible study. I don't want it to be just accountability partners. I want it to be something more than that. Something where you don't have to feel pressure to share, but you're here, you're amongst family. Vin Diesel would be proud. Family. And you're going to get some raw, honest feedback, and you're going to get rebuked. And we had no problem. That was the best part, is that the Holy Spirit was so present in our conversations that people would call each other out, but it wouldn't be for the sake of making me feel better. It was saying, hey man, I struggle with this too, or I know this, but here's what you need to do. Here's how it's helped me. And that is the foundation of D group. And we've had our chat since college, going on since July of 2016. And it's continued to be that. So for other people out there, and I think this has only been affirmed more, and I think all of us have experienced this. I've lost a lot of friendships since college, several in the last year, and the stuff that has remained has been D group. I'm not estranged from any of you guys. I'm not physically close with you guys because we're all across the country, but you're my closest friends now. It's no longer the people I grew up with that I've known for 20 years. And it's fact, I've shared that with you. But I say that because other members of the group are starting to express that as well. It's the endurance of time, which has only been wrought by the Holy Spirit. So what I want to ask you guys is, for those other men, other women out there who are our age, pretty much in the middle of the road millennials, late 20s, who, they're deep in life now. They're married, they're having kids like us now, where your time is really starting to get spread thin. How do you maintain friendships like this? How do you start things like this? Because it's never too late to start things and seek out discipleship amongst friends. So I guess I'll throw it to you first, Adam. What is it about this group that's held us together? And what is your encouragement for those who need something like this group and are kind of lost in where to begin?
What was the first half of that question? Sorry, I was lost in
thought. It happens. Like, how do you think we've kept up this longevity for so long? And then how do you encourage other people to start something like this?
Yeah, it's well, I think as far as why we were discussing this a couple weeks ago, just in kind of preparation a little bit, but as far as why it has lasted so long, I think there has been an understanding that I don't know. There's been, Michael's kind of spearheaded just the diligent weekly practice. Like, we're doing it this week. We're doing it this week. We're doing it this week. Like, hey guys, we're having it this week. That kind of thing. So that's definitely been a huge part of keeping us all together, as far as like that in supreme intentionality of just, so that's the first key word, I think, is intentionality, and the desire to maintain connection. We've never really taken any breaks. Like we've never, like, I think the only exception being like immediately after graduation, we kind of all went our separate ways and then started up the chat again. Again, it was what, like June, July of 2016 that we started up. So intentionality, just I don't know, like there's something really special about just being, like, we all have a desire to be fully known and loved. And when you're with people for that long, and it's so strange because college time is weird. Michael made mention earlier that like we had the opportunity to not only see each other just on one night, but we would see each other. We'd have multiple contact points among each other throughout the week because campus was so small. Olivet life was so small that we had multiple, like, life together in college is so much different if you're in a small, tight-knit community like that. Like, one thing that Emily and I had to adjust to super quick when we graduated was that like relationships take so much longer outside of that kind of moratorium. So like,
Yeah.
As far as someone seeking that kind of community, intentionality has to be even more like present, because not only do you have to navigate like, okay, we're gonna do this, consistently, like you have to,
Well,
I don't
it's
know,
sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, and it's going to take time away when
yes.
it's not already built in. Like we've had, like it's just kind of like part of a thing. And you mentioned the fact that we started up really quickly. We kind of got settled in our space. We gave each other space. Like, yep, we're going to get jobs, all this stuff. But yet we're going to get back to it. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I already had that planned in my life, and I know that school life is vastly different than my working life as far as the
Mhm.
schedule goes, but it was mentally something we already set aside. So for the people out there who maybe don't have that right now, that's what's going to take. It's going to take sacrifice, but it's how badly do you want that type of discipleship? Do you want to be known and be loved unconditionally by other people? And that's something that you look at the disciples themselves. They talk about modeling anything after they were called by one singular person for a specific purpose from different backgrounds. They didn't necessarily like each other. They had reason. They had reason for their animus towards one another, but they were united through one thing, and I think that's the foundation. But I think you're getting to a point, Adam, and I feel free anyone else who wants to chime in, is the value of having this now. How would in the world would we start it today? I mean, for the people who don't have anyone, it's like you're not going to really meet someone on the internet, are you? I mean, just trying to brainstorm ideas for other people out there.
Well, I have an idea. I think the reason why it's worked for us is there's probably like two or three like core reasons. I think one core reason is that we have a couple of us, especially Michael, who, like Adam said, who are very diligent about making sure it happens, making sure that people feel like they belong as a part of the group, and kind of spearheading that. Because I mean, I can speak for myself. I'm never the one who sends out the text message or starts the call or does any of this stuff. You know what I mean? But even in college, it was always Michael coming around like, so you coming to D group tonight? You doing this? You coming tonight? It's like, if you're not there, Michael's going to notice, so I should go. You know. And believe me, there's weeks I didn't want to go. So I think, like you were saying, it takes a little bit of intentionality, but I think it also takes something that I've just been sitting in my brain for a long time, and I've recommended this to everybody in the D group, but to read this book. It's called Belonging: Reconnecting America's Loneliest Generations. It's a great book. Pick it up. It's on Amazon. It's $20. and it'll take you half an hour to read. It's
That's
about a research study, and they surveyed over 1,000 people in Gen Z ages 13 to 23, and so it talks a lot about like feelings of loneliness and stuff. But at the end of the book, they come up with 3 core principles and 3 common things that they noticed throughout their surveys and interviews with these people of how they feel like they belong to a group. Because that's what I feel like we all, I guess I'm only speaking for myself, but I feel like that's what we all feel here is a sense of belongingness, and which is why we're so open to sharing and open to making this a priority. And I think so they have 3 levels. Level 1 is I'm noticed, right? So that's like just being like noticed and named, like, hey, Dan, join our group. You know what I mean? Dan, you live with me, you're coming to D group. You know what I mean? It's like that first level of like, oh, hey, this person wants me to come. You know, they want me to join. The second level is what I just kind of mentioned, is I am named. So it's like getting like a text message, hey, I noticed you weren't there last night. You know what I mean? Is everything okay? You know, or it's like checking in on the middle of the week. It's kind of like that extra step, which is kind of the hardest step to take.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say hi, but the second step of being like, hey, of intentionality, like, hey, I actually want to, you know, be in relationship with you at least a little bit is the hard part. And then the third thing that they noticed, or the third trend that they saw, is like, it's called I am known, which is essentially it's known among the group, or among the person anyway, that if any, like, there's not going to be a reason why I'm excommunicated from the group. Generally speaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I don't have to have my general filter on, you know, around these people. I can let them know what's going on, and it's not gonna change how they feel about who I am.
Mhm.
So I think those 2 things, and I guess to wrap it up real quick, the third thing I would say is I've been in a lot of small groups, and not all small groups will have this, and not all small groups will work just like this. But it's kind of like you just have to keep trying different people essentially until something fits, you know, because not every relationship is going to fit, and you can't force a square block into a round thing. You know what I'm saying? I can't.
There you go.
I don't know.
You ended so
Yeah.
well there. No, I understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
what you're saying is unconditional, and that's hard to find. That's very elusive, especially when we're young, and at that prime age in college, when we're all very vulnerable as young men, but also very prideful. So to admit any faults and weaknesses and to trust each other with that, it's all from the Holy Spirit. But the fact that we look back on it now, it's like, well, if we had to write a book on how to do this, it'd be like, well, ask God for it. Because I think ultimately all of our hearts, we were seeking that. We just, in a lot of ways, we didn't know it, and God threw this in our laps. Zane, I have to ask you, because as somebody who is in a sense busier than all of us with your travel for your job, but the fact that you have a wife and 2 kids, like how does somebody who might be in your position, who would say, well, where do I have time? You know, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I know I need other good men in my life to hold me accountable. It's a theme in our group. Like, I don't know where I'd be. I'd be in the tall grass somewhere without you guys as good men. How would you encourage other fathers, husbands, guys who are, you know, into their career? How do you encourage them to be able to be disciplined with their time, to set aside time for this type of stuff?
Yeah, and it's definitely a very, very important aspect, and I haven't always prioritized it, and I really do see the effects when you can't get that for a long time. I've definitely seen it personally, and I guess even, I would even encourage, like, just reaching out to your local church, and because I know that, we were very blessed too. In addition to this group, we were very blessed. We had a lot of small groups through our church that it was like like there was like a big session you could go to, and you could kind of sign up and be like, oh, this is specifically for single people, or this is specifically for married couples, or things like that. And we got into
we got into one group at our church. We were there for probably 3.5 years. Then we went from that group and went to another group for 2 years, and that was a group where we had people around our age. So just even look at, I would say, even look at your local church and just see if something like that exists, and if it doesn't, maybe even start something. I know that's that's bold to do, but that's how I guess this group started, was just two guys and a vision. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, I mean, it's I would really encourage people to either start that group if it doesn't exist, or even look within your church.
Mhm. I love that, man. Thank you, because that's you can. It's kind of like the Gandhi thing, be the change. If it's not there, why don't you create it? And that's something too, is that when you have opportunities, they actually might be there. You just have to take the time to look for them, and it does reveal whether or not you really want it. And nowadays, like commitment, that's probably one of the biggest thing our generation of people lack. That's a question I have for anyone. But before we move on, is Jonathan, Jared, anyone else? Do you guys do you have any insight as to for people who maybe want a group like this to start, but they just either don't know how, or they don't know where to do it? And then is there any things that you've seen that's helped our longevity as a group together?
Well, when I when I think of this group, one word really comes to mind that I feel like kind of describes this group, and I just got the word loyalty. Michael, I think you've done a great job of instilling a lot of loyalty in a lot of the small group members, and in the best sense of the word. I think it takes a little bit of leadership. I mean, this group, I don't know if me could have, but a lot of this group wouldn't happen if there wasn't someone that was kind of doing like a lot of the leading. If there was, no leader, you never know if, something like some like these things, this group doesn't happen maybe. So I think it takes some kind of servant leadership, I think, for a lot of these groups to really to keep going, because different members are at different commitment levels. I mean, you essentially could testify to that. You guys are seeing with me. So I think it definitely takes some kind of leadership and someone to be proactive in that, like has been said. But I also think that we have also felt like a sense of loyalty, um, not just to you, Michael, but to each other. We feel accountable, and I think that's like a big aspect of it. We know that this group has been very important in our lives, and that's something that I can see you guys have kind of testified to every week. And I think that is what reminds a lot of you guys or a lot of us, that this group has meant a lot to people. And I think that's another reason why it's continued for so long, is that we've had these, testimonies of how this group has really meant a lot to you. And I think if someone were to want to start something like this, I think definitely starting in your church would be something, or just be, even if it's not in your church, you find, someone, and being interested in them, and noticing people. People really like to talk about themselves. I think just noticing people and inviting them to coffee and inviting them to talk about themselves for an hour. A lot of people would enjoy doing that. And, if they don't want to talk about themselves, and you could talk about yourself and your experiences with them, and just being interested in them. And that's how I think you cultivate a sense of loyalty, is when you're vulnerable and you're noticing them, and you're telling some of your insecurities. You're not bragging you're not bragging about them, or you're not broadcasting them, but you're finding the right group of people that can be trusted with those insecurities and vulnerabilities. So I think it's just noticing people, and being willing to listen to people, and listen to their stories. I think starting with your church and then working outwards. I think it doesn't even have to be 5 or 6 people. It could just be 1 or 2 people.
Exactly.
It doesn't have, you don't have to make it complicated. You could just start out talking about your lives. It doesn't have to be, super spiritual. We
Right.
a lot of times here in D group, we talk about is SpongeBob all the time. So
now it finally comes out. That we finally have revealed that's what's held us together for so long.
yes, SpongeBob is the real reason we're all meeting on Thursday nights. That's literally
Just-
the only reason.
Just so everyone knows, I did put a SpongeBob reference in the chat.
You
So-
did?
Oh my gosh. I think I sure it's something like that. I
Oh
thought
my-
it was something.
I did
Okay.
catch that, Dan. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh
no.
my gosh. Anyway,
Jared, you are touching on things that Dan just read from that book about being noticed, and
yeah.
who knows? And Adam alluded to it at the very beginning, was that he felt a pull, and he noticed my distress, and he answered that. And look where we are here now, some 8.5 years later, almost. And it's that grand vision was being able to say, guys, I've heard about it my entire life, of being able to have people here. I've always heard it, that college, the reason why people bond so close is because of the vulnerabilities, a lot of the insecurities, and the friends you make there can be friends for life. And we're eventually going to do it. Our D group retreat, we're going to do it. But the idea that in 20 more years, we can tell our kids and the next generation, saying, you see that guy over there? See Uncle Adam? We call him Uncle Adam, or Uncle Zane. I've known him for so many years, and I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry on this podcast. But the fact that I've been to his wedding, I've been through the pit of hell with him. I've been to the mountaintop with him, and he's done the same for me. And you see Curtis, you see Dan, you see Jared, you see Jonathan. We all have done that. And son and daughter, the friendships and the relationships that you can pursue in life, if they're rooted in Jesus, you can have people who are closer than brothers and sisters to you. And that is what I've always kept as like the vision. Like, that's something that God has always put on my heart, but you guys have had to answer that. I can't force you to come here. And I can't. And so at some point, the Holy Spirit has taken you guys and said that you need to be committed to this as well. And before I ask this final question, so I can let you guys be free, Jonathan, did you see over the course of your time here with D Group over the last several years something that added to our longevity and stuff that you see that can help others who are struggling?
I would say, and this takes a while to get to sometimes, but our D group is definitely at its best when we are rigorously honest, which means that, it's not all the time, but there are plenty of times that everything's out on the table, man. We are open with each other, and we tell each other about our lives in almost its entirety. And that way, you get a full picture of a person, and you can see where God's working with them, and what kind of struggles they're going through. And you can tell them, hey, this is how God has helped me here. And help someone walk through that pain or that struggle.
Yeah.
I'll just add one more quick thing too, is that I feel like a lot of like, at least just for me and my relationships in my life, it feels like a lot of insecurities tend to get in the way of me actually pursuing those things, which is why it takes a lot of intentionality, because sometimes, you'd be like, well, I don't know if this group actually likes me, so I'll just start backing away,
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if like what if I ask them to do something and they say no, and they're not really interested, you know what I mean? Those kind of like thoughts kind of get in our head, and it stops us from actually pursuing things that could be wonderful in the future,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they giving into fear and anxiety, all that stuff has nothing to do with God. And look what happens when you step aside and you let God to take things, and then we obey. It's been beautiful. So I think one of the biggest enemies nowadays in our culture is commitment. It's something that I would say we're the most commitment less generation in a way. It's very much socially acceptable to cancel not just plans, but do so at the last minute, to say, or I'm not going to go, I'm not going to communicate. So there's not a lot of commitment or the weight, at least I've seen amongst our own generation, except for in this group. And yes, there are phases where God takes us other places, like some of our members, and then he brings us back. And the thing is that D group is here first and foremost because of God. It's not going anywhere. If we keep our eyes fixated on God, it's also not going to go anywhere. We might go other places, we might be away for a little bit, but we're always here. But that takes commitment, and a commitment to Jesus first. If your faith is wavering, other men, other women, depending on who you are, can help you in your faith journey. But it's only going to help you as much as you're committed to Christ. The best part for all of us is flawed as human beings as we were actually wanting to do better in our faith. We were far from perfect. There was a reason why we needed each other. So God honored that commitment. And even though we weren't perfect, even though we fell short so many times, we wanted something higher. And I think we had understanding too that even if we didn't get anything out of D group that week, our presence there helped somebody else, because it's not just about me. It's not just about my faith journey. It's about what we can do for each other. And I think understanding that weight can really put things into perspective, because as us Christians, I mean, at the end of the day, our whole calling, and we've said this before, we're here to serve Jesus, spread the gospel. That's it. That's our purpose here. And how are we doing that? And I think in this group, we've served it. But to Adam, I guess for a closing question, this is for all of you guys, so feel free to chime in whenever. So this is for everyone, but just so Adam, don't talk over each other. How do we instill with the next generation or amongst our own the value of commitment, and how that can pay off, and how you can see dividends from it?
Goodness.
Yeah, you don't have to respond. It's just because I'm talking to two youth pastors, Adam and Dan here. That's their biggest challenge, is trying to solve, like, how do we get people to come? How do we show the youth, especially, the value of being in church?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, here's the problem. Many of you guys would be a millionaire if you found out that answer and could put it down in a book somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, man, I want to try and briefly answer this, and I want to add maybe a different kind of tag. I don't know. I think the only way that you understand the value is if you experience it yourself, I guess. You can tell someone all the time, like, hey, you need to be more committed, I guess. I don't know. One of the things that I try and do in my youth group is creating a space that emulates a lot of the things that we value, right? So we're intentionally meeting together every week. Our 3 core values are love, respect, and fellowship. When we're in our group, we strive to love God and love others. We try and respect each other's opinions. We respect the space that we're in. We value the communal aspect of being together, the fellowship. So in a sense, I'm trying to help them see, maybe one day they look back and they say, man, my youth group, that community that I had was really, really formative in my faith and in my life. And in just, as we talked about, a lot of us testified to, our youth groups and how they were safe places for us, or what have you, or they had a significant impact in our faith journey. So I think that's definitely a huge part of it. I want to go back for a second and just add a little tag. If there's one thing that I've been learning more and more about in the last several months, it's being my eyes have been opened to the amount of hurt that is just rampant in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons, if anyone's listening who, maybe they have an adverse reaction to small groups because they've had a bad experience in the past, they've had a bad church experience in the past, I'm sorry that happened. I don't know. It's difficult for me. I haven't experienced I mean, I have experienced hardships, like dealing with things inside the church, but like I haven't been hurt by the church in a way that would make me give up hope on the church and leave that community, I guess. And like, I think that it doesn't, finding that group, finding that community, finding those friends that will walk through hell and walk on the mountain with you, like sometimes that takes time, it takes patience, it takes it takes vulnerability, it takes trying again, it takes, healing. So if you have been in a rough spot, like, I don't know why I felt the need to say that. I just think that, like,
It's okay,
you know,
man. I like
not
it.
everyone has like such joyous experiences as what we have experienced.
Right.
It makes me all the more grateful for what we have experienced. But like, I've talked with people who just like don't like the idea of small groups. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. It's
Yeah.
like, or I don't trust the church, like,
Mhm.
or I don't trust whatever, or maybe I don't know. I don't know. So, and
It brings up a whole nother topic of those who have been disenfranchised, who have a trouble on trusting, and for those people, and it's basically the same answer I have for people who are incredibly apathetic about something, and
Mhm.
people who aren't committed. I think it comes back to the one thing that if you know somebody like that, um, or if you're that person, I think being shown by other people. So this is a charge to the people that are in each other's lives, to echo what Jared had said about noticing people. So you might not be that hurting person, whoever you might be listening to this, but you might know somebody,
Mm,
but you might not know they're struggling because you never asked them. Now they
yeah.
might not inherently trust you, but that doesn't give you the excuse not to trust them. And if you are that person, I pray that God brings you somebody that you can trust, you can open up to, because the only way out of that is being shown the value of being committed, the value of not being apathetic, and the value of being trusted and experiencing a community where you can be trusted and accepted for who you are, and not fearing being ostracized or cast out. And I know this is gonna be a shocking thing because we're gonna get as far as the Gospels in the Bible. It's living out our faith. It's encompassing all of that. We have to show people. We can't just talk about it.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to tag on, Adam, I'm actually glad that you talked about that, because I think that is important to speak up when you're talking about encouraging others to join a group. Maybe we kind of forgot to mention something along those lines in the talking about why people should have a group like this. If people have been hurt by groups like these in the past, because there are groups like that, or there are experiences like that. And for those people, I would say that, um, you know, that just to open up your heart again. I know it's really hard, but if the disciples were able to make it work and spread the gospel with all the problems that they had with each other, and maybe how mistrustful they thought of one another, they were able to still make Jesus their number one thing. And I encourage you, and I just say that there are people out there that you can trust, that you can pour your heart out. And if you ask God, and if you cry your heart out to Him, He listens, and He'll provide that small group, that group of people that you can really trust, that you can pour your heart out and spread out. Just to You don't have to do it immediately, obviously, not on night one, obviously, but that you can eventually get so deep with it, you can share your life story, that you can trust again.
Mhm. Good word, man. Anyone else before we go want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I as I'm sitting here thinking about commitment, I think commitment comes very naturally to people. For a lot of people, it comes very naturally. But I think the thing that stops a lot of people from committing to something is they're not sure if that's something that's worth committing to. Because at least for me, when I feel like something's worth jumping into, I jump into it. I'm all about it. I'm for it. And maybe not everybody's like that, but at the same time, um, like a group like this, or any group, that is centered around Christ and stuff can be started just like Adam and Michael started this, you know, with Adam just walking into Michael's room and just being like, "Hey, you okay?" You know what I mean? And like, you know, and after like talking, like if you think it should be a thing, you can call it out and be like, "Hey, this is a great thing we have going here. Let's keep it going. Let's build upon it." And because frankly, like the way I view all of you is almost like this is kind of like my home church. I know we all have our own churches and stuff like that, but this is my church. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm so committed to it. Maybe it's why like whenever I've gone to other churches, I'm kind of like I don't always feel like a visitor. Like I feel like I go there, but sometimes I feel like you know I have two churches almost. You know what I'm saying? So so I think for like commitment, I think it's just like for when you see something that's good and when you see something that's like yes, this is something from God, this is something God's giving me, you just jump right into it and you just got to know, like God will tell you and you just know it.
Mhm. Yes, for sure. For sure. Well, certainly great perspective on all of these questions tonight, guys. We're not trying to solve all the world's problems, but before we go, does anyone else have any closing thoughts on tonight? Anything you want to share?
Well, I think I've really enjoyed this group. I know that I kind of came in late, and I'm kind of the sometimes the outsider. Obviously, you guys wouldn't characterize me as that, and I don't characterize me as that either. But I've just really been really appreciative of being part of this group, and that you guys are still that Michael, you've always invited me in, even when I've been away for months or whatever. But just going back on commitment, instilling commitment in the next generation, I just so much of the youth are feeling, as was pointed out, like with Dan, that Gen Z is one of the most loneliest generations, and I think part of it is giving them ownership sometimes over their youth group. With the youth group at the church I lead, I'm not I lead, but I'm a young adult leader at um, our youth group, and what I've seen that has helped with commitment with our students is that our youth pastor is giving them ownership over some aspects of the youth group.
Mm.
The theme for our last year, not this year, but our last year of youth group, was that the youth will lead. And he read some passage in, I don't know if it was First Chronicles or Second Chronicles, or maybe it was Psalms. It was a psalm where it went something along the lines of astonishingly, it was the youths and young maidens that were leading the pack of Israel, rejoicing with God. And that kind of spurred my youth pastor getting to think, hey, what if we let the youth lead some of the aspects of the church, like announcements, welcoming people in, some aspects of worship. And I think giving them a lot of leadership, I think, instills a lot of commitment in the next generation. You're not going to get everybody to be committed, but it's just giving ownership to some aspects of the experience, and again, back to the noticing thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I that is some good words there, and being able to basically ask people to be participants and their own faith journey instead of saying, "Here's what you need to do," and they almost come across as like watching themselves like third partying their own faith journey, saying, oh, "Okay, I guess if I do all this," so that's good stuff, Jared. Um, thank you guys to all of you for everyone for your time tonight. And I would love to do this again with you all. I appreciate all your sacrifice. So, Adam, Jared, Jonathan, Zane, Dan, appreciate you all. I love you, brothers. And we'll have to do this again soon, okay?
No.
Definitely.
Hey,
All right.
awesome.
See ya.
All right.
Sounds
See you
good.
guys.
Bye.
Bah.
Thank you so much again to Jonathan, Zane, Dan, Adam, and Jared for the wonderful time tonight. That was our D group. And that is something that we do every week. And we've done it every week since, I don't know, the fall 2012, spring of 2013. It takes commitment. And if you are struggling, if you're feeling lonely, I hope this could have been an encouragement to you tonight, because this has given me strength. And I know that I have strengthened others. And this faith journey is not just about me, it's our responsibility to one another, especially as us men deal with a lot of things that women don't. And for the ladies out there, I hope you can find something like that too. A group where you can be vulnerable and depend on one another and trust one another. You don't have to be best friends. What's happened here in this group is that they have become my closest friends. And that's all because of God. That was not the motivation going in. So, like Adam, I would encourage you, if you were looking for that, why don't you go and ask somebody how they're doing? And that might be the start. But in any case, allow God to always direct your paths. And in that regard, may God bless you and may God keep you.